All right, Andrew, thank you so much for being on Hot Mic.
I'm so glad. I can't wait to see what you have on tap.
Let's jump right into it if you are ready. It looks like you're having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about some of the viral videos. Like there was a video of you putting whipped cream in somebody's mouth and crowd surfing.
That's a full-service presidential candidate.
Are you actually having fun?
I have a sense I'm having a lot more fun than a lot of other people that have run for president, that's for sure.
Sure.
Like just yesterday, I played 3-on-3 basketball with J.D. Scholten, who's running for Congress, against this real jerk, Steve King. So if you want to help someone good win, J.D. Scholten versus Steve King. So we find fun things to do every day on the trail. I enjoy talking to Americans. I enjoy people. So if it feels like I'm enjoying myself, I'm thrilled because I really am, especially now that my wife joins me on the trail sometimes, because the main cause of not enjoying myself has been being away from the family.
I mean, it's not just joking in person, like you're joking online. You follow me on Twitter, I follow you on Twitter, I see your tweets. Do you think like having a sense of humor about this, because there are definitely different ways to campaign, and we see it right in this Democratic primary. Is that something you're consciously thinking of? Like maybe this will make me relate to voters more?
Well, a lot of it, Brittany, is that no one knew who the heck I was when I started this campaign.
Sure.
So you're trying to take any opportunity to introduce yourself to people. And it's very hard for people to feel like they know you if you act like a robot all the time and then you have some committee that approves like every tweet or social media interaction. Yeah, so it gives people a sense that they know me.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm trying to do as fast as possible, really, which is introduce myself to the American people and the fact that we can do better.
Well, sometimes like those jokes, I think have kind of caught some controversy. You know, during your stump speech, you often have your joke like, the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math.
We need to do the opposite of much of what we're doing right now, and the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math.
There was a story that came out in the LA Times, I think I want to say like a month ago, that, you know, talked to many Asian American people in Los Angeles, and they felt a little bit uncomfortable. I'm curious, do you think that those kinds of jokes might be alienating those voters?
When I see Asian Americans around the country, they're by and large very excited about my campaign and candidacy, and I'm a very, very proud member of that community. I think Americans are smart enough to recognize a joke when they hear it, and that if I say something about like Asian American, I'm an Asian guy who likes math or whatever, that doesn't make them think that 17 million Asian Americans all like math.
In their defense, like if that's something that they feel that they're offended by, they have the right to be offended by that, especially if they are Asian American.
And certainly, if I felt like people were being hurt by these jokes and or were offended, then of course I would take it very seriously. When I do talk to people, most people understand the source of the humor and the spirit of it. And even the folks in LA I sat down with that had an issue with it, after sitting down with them, I think a number of them felt more, I guess they felt more where it was coming from.
Because like you were not a household name, you were not a senator, you were not a former vice president, you were just a man with an idea. Just a man with an idea.
Just a man with a plan.
Sure.
Give everyone a dividend, eradicate poverty, do it MLK style.
We're like less than 50 days to the Iowa caucus. At what point do the intros end?
Well, despite the fact that I've been campaigning for the better part of 2 years now.
It's been a long time.
The fact is many Americans are just now tuning in. You know, like certainly people in the media follow this campaign every single day, but most Americans just living their lives, trying to get ahead, spend time with their friends and family. And so there are many people tuning in all the time. That's why saying that you still need to introduce yourself to the American people, if you're me,
right,
and your name awareness is lower than the other candidates, that you still have a lot of work to do.
Well, is this where the rift with MSNBC came in? I mean, I think many people are aware of the MSNBC media blackout. You know, you've been very vocal about criticizing them not putting you on graphics for polls, or you didn't have a lot of speaking time during the last debate. I mean, is this the root of that spat?
The root of that spat is that they seem to be treating me differently than other candidates.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, but I would love for them to explain it to the 350,000 plus Americans who donated to this campaign and would expect to see their donations counted on graphics on a TV network.
Well, I'm sure you have a hunch. Like, what do you, I mean, if you're watching and you're not you're not on the graphic, like something must be running through your head.
Yeah, really. Well, what's running through my head, or what did run through my head initially, was that they don't understand this campaign. But that has seemed less and less possible, given that at this point I've already outperformed half a dozen or more senators, governors, and congresspeople.
Well, you're on stage at their network's debates, so they have to understand something.
You would think, you would hope.
I mean, have you been in talks with them? Like, what's an ideal kind of outcome for this? Because it can get a bit nasty.
Well, I've been very clear saying, look, as soon as they acknowledge that they made errors in our coverage and they'll treat us like every other candidate, I'll be back on their network the next day.
There's reporting recently in the New York Times that said Trump was, thinking about maybe not participating in the debates because he thought that maybe the moderators would be unfair. Do you feel for him at all, or what do you make of that reasoning?
Well, I believe he's referring to the Republican debates. Is that right?
No, just like in the general debates. Once the nominees.
Wow,
Yeah.
I thought he was just talking about the Republican debates.
My understanding is the general.
He's gonna no-show the debates. Wow. I think that would be pretty disgraceful if you're the sitting president and you don't even show up to debate the nominee of the other party that's coming to take your job. I don't think the American people would enjoy that. I think it'd be a very hard job for him to explain that one away.
Speaking of tickets and you wanting to take his job, are there any of your rivals who are still your rivals, or maybe were former your rivals, that you'd either want, in a Yang administration or on a Yang ticket?
I'm happy to say I become friends with other people that have been running for president, because you naturally bond with other people that are going through a similar experience. You're in the same green rooms or union halls or steak fries or fish fries or whatever it happens to be. And so I share text messages with half a dozen of the other candidates. I would work with many of them, and as president, I can't wait to enlist many of them to join the cabinet.
Could you name a couple? I don't know who you're texting, so you're going to have to give me some clarity.
Well, I get along with Corey very well, with Kamala very well. I miss Kamala actually on the trail. I had a lot of respect for Beto. He's always very kind to me from day one and had a natural interest in helping people. And the people that are still in the field, I've had conversations with Joe, Bernie, Senator Warren about trying to solve problems together.
So are they all welcome in the Yang administration? Like, I have friends, but these are sometimes my friends, I don't want them to work for me, so.
They would all be welcome in the Yang administration. We need all hands on deck to solve the problems that got Trump elected and then help move the country forward. I could work with virtually all of them and will enjoy doing so.
What about Veep? Biden was quoted recently saying that he would be open to, having a person of color, like pledging to have a person of color as his VP. Have you thought about that? Are you willing to make kind of any promises?
Well, a couple of things I've thought about for Veep. Number one, as someone who's new to DC, it would be great if I had a Veep that had very deep relationships on Capitol Hill and knew people. Because if you look at Barack Obama when he came in 08, it was a similar situation, and he said he would tab Joe Biden because Joe Biden had been a senator for a long time.
Right.
You have to get things done. Number two, I'd prefer to have a woman running mate, because I think that organizations run better if you have strong male and female leadership at every level. The big test really is whether you have that degree of trust and comfort with someone, because they have to be your partner, and you have to know that there's a real chance that they'll be the next president.
Do you have a short list?
One of the fun things is my relationships are still developing with some of the other candidates.
Sure.
But there are some people that I've definitely thought to myself, at this point though, it would be presumptuous for me to say, want to be my running mate? Because, right now I'm in 5th place. It's a different thing after I'm the nominee.
Right. I mean, no Joe Rogan vice president.
It'd be an outsider, that's for sure.
Are you ready to go negative? I speak to a lot of campaigns all the time, like I can level with you, and the candidates, and they always say, I love Andrew, like you're their buddy.
Well, I'm glad other candidates like me. I mean, it makes me very happy. I like them too.
Sure.
I think Americans understand a rehearsed attack line when they hear it. They understand when candidates are trying to get more attention by trying to generate a conflict. between themselves and another candidate. To me, the real competition should be who has a clearer vision for the country that can provide a new way forward that Americans will get excited about. That's the competition and the conversation I want to have.
Right, but there are campaigns though that have said, Bernie has said, I don't want to go, negative on Elizabeth, and I think maybe that's actually wavered a little bit since then. But people have come out and said it. You haven't been so discreet one way or the other.
I think people can sense that this campaign is very humanity first. We just tell it like it is. And so if another candidate did something that I found genuinely offensive or troubling, I would be very happy to call them out for it. But at the same time, I think Americans can tell when you're trying to stick it to someone for political points versus some kind of genuine disagreement.
Or, for me, more a viral moment. I think a lot of times us in the media, we get really hung up on being like, oh, what's your viral moment plan going to be, or your t-shirt moment, or your bumper sticker moment.
Yeah, if you try and go for that, voters can smell it a mile away, and it's painful. It makes you wince. When that politician goes with their rehearsed joke and you're like, oh, that didn't work.
Is there one that comes to mind right now?
Feeling. Well, what I would suggest is that if you look at the conflicts that have occurred on the debate stage, a lot of the people that initiated those conflicts ended up not benefiting from that decision. If you look around the field and you say, what are the conflicts we can remember? A lot of those people, to me, ended up not really taking an opportunity to be proactive and present a positive vision. Instead, they attacked one of our competitors.
Who is your closest candidate friend?
Gosh. Of the candidates in the field still that I'm going to see on the debate stage,
sure.
I'd say I've had the most interactions with Joe. Actually, Joe met Evelyn at one of the last events and was really kind to her, and that we have a very natural affinity. He actually came to me and said, he's very concerned about the fourth industrial revolution, and that if we automate away the jobs, it's going to be a fundamental threat to the middle class. And that made me really excited because I was like, wow, Joe is listening.
It kind of feels like maybe a soft VP invite if things don't work out for you. Would you be open to being Joe's number 2?
Well, I'm going to help get Donald Trump out of office and help us win. And that's in any capacity. Certainly I want to be the nominee myself, but if I'm part of the team, I'll do my part for sure.
So is that a yes? Would you be open to it?
Of course, if any of the candidates prevails and asks me to be their running mate, of course I would take a very long, hard look at it.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Alyssa Milano's tweet. She said that she had to pull out of a fundraiser or an event you were having in California because of allegations of sexual misconduct, which she said, quote, were not appropriately addressed. You told folks on the bus that, it wasn't sexual in nature. But when I was looking on Twitter and on Google, I really couldn't find anything about what she was referring to. So I want to give you the opportunity to kind of tell me what happened, if you fired the campaign worker and kind of what actually was going on. I think a lot of people would like to know the truth.
We take any allegation of misconduct very, very seriously. We investigated as soon as we had any indication that something was amiss. And the person that was accused, we found that they had not done anything sexual in nature, but we decided to dismiss that worker anyway because there had been other, essentially, management problems. So Alyssa's facts are wrong in terms of us somehow not responding quickly. And the facts on the ground, while we decided to dismiss the person, we did not find that we were convinced that there was anything sexual that had taken place.
Have you spoken to Alyssa since her tweet?
We exchanged text messages.
Could you give me a general sense of that conversation?
Well, Alyssa and I have had a number of contacts over the last number of days and weeks. And so she just said, like, hey, I hope you understand my perspective on this. And I said, of course.
So let's talk about policy for a second. I want to talk about trade in China. You've advocated against a new Cold War, and in my sense, you've also seemed to oppose some of the recent efforts to block Huawei from U.S. market. Do you think from the perspective of national security, that threats from China, at least from DC, are exaggerated?
We have to distinguish between economic competition and national security
Well,
threats.
sure.
And to me, the major security concern out of China is they may be positioned to leapfrog us in artificial intelligence, which is both economic and security related. They have more access to more data than we do. Their government is putting billions of dollars to work on a computing infrastructure in a way that we are not. And so if we fall behind in this, it's going to be very bad for the US on several levels. That's where I'd be focused. What we have to do is outcompete the Chinese and not pretend that slapping tariffs on them is actually a recipe for success. One of the most famous technologists in America today said this to me. He said, Andrew, all of our incentives on artificial intelligence are to go as fast as possible because we're in competition with each other and with other parts of the world. And he said, these are the wrong incentives because at some point, if you're going as fast as possible, one of us is going to do something we regret. And he said the government needs to come in and provide some sort of guardrails to balance the incentives for these firms. The technologists aren't people that generally raise their hand and say, hey, we need guardrails. So if someone actually says that to you, you should take it very seriously. But again, our government is nowhere near the scene.
So in that same vein of trying to have some regulation around AI and bring it ethically forward, do you think that should also be applied to Silicon Valley? I know you have lots of friends in that industry.
Very much so. So I want a new Department of the Attention Economy that helps regulate the makeup of these apps and helps balance their financial incentives with our health, our well-being, the strength of our democracy, the mental health of our kids. We have a mental health crisis among teenagers that's lockstep with the adoption of smartphones and social media apps. And what I say is that when I was an awkward 12-year-old and I went home and closed the door, I at least felt like I was alone. But today, when that 12-year-old shuts the door, they feel like all their classmates are in the room with them if they've got a smartphone. And it has a really negative effect on many of their sense of well-being because they haven't gotten to a point where they can just turn it off and say, it doesn't matter what my peers think.
Well, it's also a healthcare thing. I mean, mental health is, I deal with it all the time, and I talk to other reporters about how hard it is to, deal with mental health in an accessible way, but don't you think that that's also part of your healthcare plan to make more accessible for them?
Yeah, we have to attack it at every point. We should first say that we have a mental health crisis in this country. We have record high levels of anxiety, depression, stress, and even suicides and overdoses. And you talk about reporters and mental health. I have a sense of your job. Like, you have to be always on all the time, be like, oh, I have to see what's going on, and da-da-da-da.
Just like you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Just like me.
I mean, do you think that your mental health kind of struggles or, is tested running for president?
Well, certainly your family is tested because you're on the road so much. Your health gets tested because it's hard to eat healthy when you're on the bus.
Right. But mentally, you mean?
And mentally, sure.
Taking care of your family has been kind of difficult when you're campaigning for president, or even earlier at an event, you said that taking care of a special needs child can put a lot of pressure on your family, but not only your marriage. And I think you're one of the first candidates I've heard ever say, like, everyone should get marriage counseling.
Yeah.
And because it's really important in keeping your unit together. Could you speak more on that?
My wife and I have two young boys, Christopher and Damien, and Christopher has special needs. And when we were first-time parents, you don't know whether your 2-year-old is reacting like every other 2-year-old or whether there's something else going on. And so it was a very stressful time in our family. And I remember struggling with that time. And then when we got his diagnosis that he was on the autism spectrum, it came as a big relief. And so looking back in that time, I know that there are many families out there that are torn apart by the stresses of parenting or financial stresses. And the studies very clearly show that if you are brought up in a 2-parent household, that there are higher chances of certain positive things happening throughout your life and career. And so if a family wants to stay together, we should be helping them do so in any way possible, including paying for free marriage counseling, because if they want to stay together and they do stay together, it's a win for us all.
Do you think being more open about your marriage and your struggles will kind of help people on the road feel represented? You know, representation is just like really an important theme of this election, especially with young Democrats. They want to feel that their lived experience is your lived experience. It's not just about race or about gender, it's about, you know, lifestyle.
I'm sure we are not the first family that's run for president that's had a special needs child.
I bet.
For whatever reason, we're the first to be talking openly about it. And I think that Americans are eager to get past a point where politicians are pretending that their families are perfect, or that, that their families never experience the stress of being new parents or any of that. So I'd be grateful if we can help destigmatize the struggles that people go through at every point, including depression, anxiety, mental health problems. We all struggle in different ways, and pretending that people are superhuman isn't good for anyone.
And I want to end on a question about legacy. You know, a lot of times, even I have been guilty of saying this on TV, that people run for president because of ego. And I remember you saying earlier that it's actually not an egotistical thing. It actually is an ego-hurting thing to run for president.
It really,
I'm sure,
is for a lot of people a lot of the time.
Is it for you?
Well, now it's great. I'm on this fancy bus, like, you're interviewing me. We've got this awesome team. My wife's right there. I mean, like, now it's awesome.
Right.
But keep in mind, I've been running since February of 2018. My first trip to New Hampshire literally drew one person to the first event. And that was less awesome. There was no bus. It was a rental car, just drove up there and being like, who wants to talk to Andrew Yang? And there was no one there. So, there's one person there. I'm sorry, the one person who, I didn't mean.
Shout out to that one person.
No, I think the one person might have been there by accident and just sort of talked to me to be nice. So there's a lot of humility involved with running. It's really interesting because you can actually sense the energy around your campaign. That's one reason why I'm so excited now, because we're growing by leaps and bounds all the time. And so you see it when you're the candidate, because you show up and first it's one person, and then it's 6 people, and then it's 12 people. And now we've had rallies that have drawn thousands. But you have to have the right perspective to keep grinding when it's 1, 5, or 10 people.
Right. You know, in 5 and 10 and 20 years, when people study this election, it's gonna be like Andrew Yang, comma, businessman, comma, and then a blank sentence. Like, what's the rest of that sentence for you?
Andrew Yang helped eradicate poverty and accelerated real solutions to the challenges of the 21st century, remade American politics.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for your time. It was a pleasure having you on Mic, and I'm super excited to be here for the rest of this Iowa bus tour.
I'm so pumped you're here too on the bus. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andrew.